The silence of Vermont in late October was not empty, it was heavy. It was a physical weight that pressed against the windows of the cedar cabin, composed of the rustling of dying leaves, the groan of timber settling in the cold, and the whisper of wind moving through the pines. For most, this isolation would be maddening. For Aidan Cross, it was the only medicine that worked. Aidan stood by the kitchen island, a slab of rough-hewn granite that felt cold under his calloused fingertips. He was a man composed of sharp angles and rigid discipline. Even here, miles from the nearest paved road, he stood with his back to the wall, his eyes scanning the perimeter of the room out of habit. He was 42, but his eyes were ancient, gray, flat, and devoid of the sparkle they might have held a lifetime ago. He had been a Tier 1 operator, a Navy SEAL, the tip of the spear. Now he was just a ghost haunting his own vacation home. He hadn't touched a weapon in anger in 3 years, not since Operation Obsidian in Syria, not since Marcus died. Aidan picked up his mug of black coffee. The heat seeped into his palm, grounding him. He took a sip, the bitterness matching his mood. He was about to turn in for the night, seeking the oblivion of sleep before the nightmares could set up camp in his mind, when he heard it. Thump. It was faint. A soft, muffled sound coming from above. Aidan froze. His body, trained by decades of conditioning, reacted before his conscious mind did. His breathing became shallow and silent. His heart rate remained steady. He listened. The cabin was old. Squirrels and raccoons often found ways into the eaves. But this was different. It had weight. It was the sound of impact, of something specifically shifting mass. He set the mug down without a sound. He moved to the hallway, his socks sliding silently over the hardwood floor. He didn't reach for the gun locked in the safe by the bed. He didn't want to bring violence into this sanctuary unless he had to. Instead, he grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace stand. It was crude but effective. He approached the pull-down stairs that led to the attic. The air in the hallway was stagnant, colder than the rest of the house. He reached up, gripping the cord. With a swift, fluid motion, he pulled the stairs down. They creaked, a sound like a gunshot in the quiet house. He waited. Nothing. Slowly, deliberately, Aidan ascended. He kept his profile low, eyes scanning the darkness as his head cleared the floor level of the attic. Moonlight filtered through a single, grime-streaked gable window, illuminating dancing dust motes and piles of forgotten boxes covered in white sheets. It looked empty. He climbed fully into the space, the floorboards groaning under his weight. "If you're an animal, you better scurry," he muttered, his voice raspy from disuse. "If you're human, you picked the wrong house." He took a step forward, sweeping the iron poker through the air to clear a cobweb. Then he saw it. In the far corner, behind a stack of old steamer trunks, a shadow moved. It wasn't the frantic darting of a raccoon. It was the trembling recoil of something terrified. Aidan tightened his grip on the iron. "Come out. Now." The shadow shifted. Slowly, agonizingly, a figure rose. Aidan's breath caught in his throat. The adrenaline that had been preparing him for a fight suddenly curdled into confusion. It was a child. She couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 years old. She was small, frail, her clothes, a dirt-stained pink hoodie and torn jeans, hanging loosely on her frame. Her hair was matted, dark tangles framing a face smeared with soot and dust. But it was her eyes that pinned Aidan to the spot. They were wide, terrified, and painfully intelligent. She held her hands up, palms open, trembling violently. Aidan lowered the poker slowly, letting it rest against his leg. He felt a sudden, crushing wave of incompetence. He knew how to breach a compound. He knew how to disable an insurgent. He knew how to survive in the desert. He did not know what to do with a trembling child in his attic. "I'm not going to hurt you," Aidan said, his voice dropping an octave, softening into something he barely recognized. He took a tentative step forward. The girl flinched, backing up until her spine hit the rough wood of the wall. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at him with an intensity that unnerved him. "How did you get in here?" Aidan asked, keeping his distance. "Are you alone?" She didn't answer. Her gaze dropped to his hands, then to the way he stood. feet shoulder-width apart, balanced, ready. Her eyes moved to the faint, jagged white line of a scar that ran from his jaw down his neck, visible even in the dim light. She swallowed hard, her throat clicking dryly. Then she spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper, brittle as dried leaves. "You are like him." Aiden frowned, the words striking him with unexpected force. Like who? She didn't elaborate. She just hugged herself, shivering uncontrollably now that the initial shock of discovery was fading, replaced by the biting cold of the uninsulated attic. "Okay," Aiden said, exhaling a long breath. "Okay, we can talk about that later. You're freezing." He holstered the poker in his belt loop, a bad habit, and extended a hand. "Come on, I have a fire downstairs, and food. Are you hungry?" The mention of food caused a flicker in her eyes. It was a primal reaction, one Aiden had seen in war zones halfway across the world. Hunger was a universal language. She hesitated, looking at his hand as if it were a trap. Then she looked at his face again. She seemed to be searching for something. A sign, a signal, a threat. Whatever she saw, it seemed to be enough. She didn't take his hand, but she nodded once, a sharp, jerky movement. Aiden stepped back to the stairwell, gesturing for her to go first. "After you." As she walked past him, smelling of stale rain and fear, Aiden felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Vermont winter. "You are like him." The words echoed in his head. He had spent years trying to forget who he was. A weapon, a killer, a tool of the state. He didn't want to be like anyone. He just wanted to be alone. But as he watched the small, fragile girl descend into the warmth of his cabin, Aiden realized that his solitude was officially over. The fire crackled, sending sparks shooting up the chimney, casting long, dancing shadows against the log walls. The living room, usually a cavern of solitude, now felt charged with a strange, frantic energy. The girl sat on the edge of the oversized leather sofa. She looked tiny against the dark furniture. Aiden had wrapped a heavy wool blanket around her shoulders, and she clutched it with white-knuckled intensity. On the coffee table in front of her sat a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. Aiden hadn't had much in the fridge, but it was hot. She ate with a desperate efficiency that broke Aiden's heart. She didn't shovel the food. She ate quickly, guarding the plate with her forearm, her eyes darting around the room between bites. It was a behavior Aiden recognized. He'd seen it in refugees. He'd seen it in POWs. It was the behavior of someone who didn't know when their next meal would come. Aiden sat on the hearth of the fireplace, maintaining a respectful distance. He knew that looming over her would only increase her anxiety. He kept his hands visible, resting on his knees. "My name is Aiden," he said softly, once she had slowed down. "Do you have a name?" She paused, a piece of toast halfway to her mouth. She looked at him, assessing. "Calla," she whispered. "Calla," Aiden repeated. "That's a nice name, like the lily." She didn't smile. She just finished the toast and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Calla, I need to know where your parents are." Aiden said gently. "Are they nearby? Did you get lost hiking?" The question seemed to close a shutter behind her eyes. She shook her head. "No parents. No parents here, or no parents," she repeated firmly. Aiden rubbed the back of his neck. This was complicating rapidly. "Okay. Is there anyone I can call? The police?" "No." The word exploded out of her, sharp and terrified. She dropped the blanket, standing up on the couch. "No police. You can't. He has them too." Aiden raised his hands, palms out. "Okay, easy. No police. I promise. Sit down, Calla. You're safe here." She stood there for a moment, chest heaving, before slowly sinking back down. "You can't call anyone," she murmured. "They listen." Aiden studied her. This wasn't just a lost child. This was a child running from something specific, something organized. Paranoia didn't develop in a vacuum. "Who listens, Calla?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached up and touched something at her throat. Aiden followed the movement. Hidden beneath the grime and the oversized collar of her hoodie was a necklace. She pulled it out. It wasn't jewelry. It was a dog tag. Aiden leaned forward, his military instincts flaring. Can I see that? She hesitated, then leaned forward, letting the metal tag dangle in the firelight. Aiden didn't need to touch it to recognize the shape. It was a standard-issue military identification tag. But it wasn't American. The shape was slightly more oval, the silencer distinct. He squinted. There was an engraving, but it wasn't a name. It was an emblem, a double-headed eagle holding a sword. The air left Aiden's lungs. He knew that emblem. He had seen it burned onto crates of ammunition in a warehouse in Aleppo. He had seen it on the patch of a mercenary group that wasn't supposed to exist. Where did you get that? Aiden asked, his voice tighter than he intended. My father, she said. He gave it to me before the bad men took him. Your father, Aiden repeated. He looked at her face, really looked at her. Beneath the dirt, he saw the structure of her jaw, the shape of her eyes. And suddenly, a memory slammed into him with the force of a physical blow. Syria, 3 years ago. Smoke choking the air. The sound of gunfire rattling off the concrete walls. Marcus, his spotter, his best friend, bleeding out on the floor of a safe house. Marcus gripping Aiden's vest, pulling him down. They have her, Aiden. They have my girl. I never told you. I wanted to keep her safe. Find her. Promise me. Aiden had promised. But Marcus died before he could say a name, a location, anything. The intel had led nowhere. The trail was cold before it even started. Aiden had assumed the child, if she existed, was lost to the chaos of war. Aiden looked at Calla. Your father, he whispered. Was his name Marcus? Calla's eyes widened. The fear didn't leave them, but something else entered. A flicker of hope. Marcus, she whispered. He called me his little Lily. Aiden stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the black void of the forest. His heart was hammering against his ribs. It was impossible. It was statistically zero, and yet here she was. Marcus's secret daughter, in his attic, in Vermont. Calla, Aiden said, not turning around. You said I was like him. Who did you mean? The man who hunts, she said. The man who moves without sound, like you. He taught me to be quiet. He taught me to hide. But he didn't teach me how to run fast enough. Aiden turned back to her. You're safe now, he said, and for the first time in years, he felt a purpose solidify in his gut. It wasn't the hollow duty of a soldier following orders. It was the fierce, protective instinct of a guardian. I knew your father. He was my brother in every way that matters. Calla stared at him, tears finally tracking clean lines through the dust on her cheeks. He said you would come. He said... Aiden was confused. I didn't know you existed until 10 seconds ago. He told me, she said, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a crumbled, water-damaged photograph. He said if I was ever alone, I had to find the wolf. She held out the photo. Aiden took it. It was an old picture of their unit. There was Marcus grinning, and there was Aiden looking stoic. On the back, in Marcus's scrawl, was a set of coordinates. Coordinates that pointed exactly to this cabin. Aiden felt a chill run down his spine. Marcus had known. He had known he was going to die, and he had set up a contingency plan. He had sent his daughter to the only place he knew Aiden would eventually retreat to. But if Calla was here, it meant the people who killed Marcus weren't just random insurgents. It meant the threat had followed her home. The morning sun hit the snow-covered pines with a blinding brilliance, but inside the cabin the mood was somber. Aiden hadn't slept. He had spent the night sitting in a chair by the front door, a Sig Sauer P226 resting on the table beside him. Calla was still asleep on the couch, wrapped in the wool blanket. In sleep, she looked even younger, her face relaxed, the terror temporarily erased. Aiden moved to the kitchen and opened his laptop. He had disconnected it from the internet months ago, preferring an analog life. Now he needed the world back. He plugged in the satellite modem. The lights blinked, red, amber, green. He needed to understand what he was dealing with. Calla had mentioned bad men and experiments. She had mentioned a facility. He pulled up a secure browser, accessing a server that technically didn't exist, a back door left open by an old contact in naval intelligence. He typed in the description of the emblem on the dog tag. Double-headed eagle, sword, clutching a globe. The search spun. No results in the public databases. He switched to the classified archives, using an encryption key he should have destroyed when he retired. Access granted. The file that opened was redacted heavily. Black bars covered names and locations, but the project name was visible. Project Chimera. Aiden read the summary, his stomach churning. It wasn't a standard military operation. It was a private military contractor, PMC initiative, sanctioned off the books by rogue elements within the Defense Department. The goal: cognitive enhancement and conditioning of subjects for high-stress covert operations. Subjects, not soldiers. The file referenced genetic markers and second-generation candidates. Aiden looked over at the sleeping girl. Second generation. If Marcus had been part of the program, or a victim of it, Calla might have been targeted not just because she was his daughter, but because of her DNA. They weren't trafficking her for money. They were trafficking her for potential. He felt a surge of nausea. This was why Marcus had been so secretive. This was why he had died. He wasn't killed by enemies of the state. He was likely silenced to keep Chimera hidden. Aiden closed the laptop abruptly as Calla stirred. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. When she saw Aiden, she tensed, then relaxed slightly. "Did you find them?" she asked, her voice groggy. "I found something," Aiden said carefully. "Calla, listen to me. We need to leave. This cabin isn't safe." If Marcus had given her the coordinates, it meant he trusted Aiden. But if Calla had been on the run, she might have left a trail. And if Chimera was as sophisticated as the file suggested, they had satellites, drones, and trackers. "Where will we go?" she asked, swinging her legs off the couch. "I have a friend," Aiden said. "Someone who can help us understand what's inside that necklace of yours." "The necklace?" She touched it. "It's not just a tag, Calla. It's a key. I'm sure of it." Aiden walked over and knelt in front of her. "But before we go, I need you to be brave. I need you to do exactly what I say when I say it. Can you do that?" She nodded, her expression hardening. "I can be quiet. I can hide." "Good. But today, we're not hiding. We're moving." Aiden went to the hall closet and pulled out a go bag. He tossed it on the table. He began packing essentials: ammunition, first aid, maps, cash. He handed Calla a pair of warm socks and a beanie he had. "Put these on. We hike out. The road is too predictable." As they prepared to leave, a sound cut through the morning air. It wasn't the wind. It was the rhythmic thwop, thwop, thwop of rotors. Aiden froze. He moved to the window, staying in the shadows. A black helicopter, unmarked, was cresting the tree line, coming in low over the valley. It was banking directly toward his property. "They're here," Calla whispered, standing behind him. She wasn't crying anymore. She was trembling, but she stood her ground. Aiden turned to her, his face a mask of cold determination. "Grab your bag. We're leaving out the back. Now." He grabbed the pistol, checked the chamber, and slid it into his waistband. He grabbed his AR-15 from the gun safe. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was a war. "You said I was like him," Aiden said, looking at Calla. "You were right. I am. And that's exactly why you're going to survive this." He kicked open the back door, and together they sprinted into the tree line just as the helicopter began its descent onto the front lawn. The snow crunched under their boots, the only sound in a world that had suddenly become very loud. The hunt was on. The Vermont forest was a deceptively beautiful killing ground. To the untrained eye, it was a postcard of white snow and dark evergreens. To Aiden Cross, it was a chessboard of lines of sight, fatal funnels, and cover. They had been moving for 40 minutes, a brutal pace through knee-deep snow. Calla was struggling. Her legs were shorter, her stamina depleted by days of hiding in the attic before Aiden found her. But she didn't complain, not once. She bit her lip until it bled, forcing one foot in front of the other, stepping exactly where Aiden stepped to minimize their trail. Aiden stopped abruptly, raising a clenched fist. Calla froze instantly, dropping to a crouch just as she had been, evidently trained to do. Aiden listened. The helicopter had peeled off, likely to refuel or scan a wider sector, but the ground team was the real threat. He could hear them, the crack of a dried branch, the distant murmur of voices coordinated by radio. They were tracking fast. Too fast. "They have a dog," Aiden whispered, kneeling beside Calla. He saw the panic flare in her eyes and placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. Listen to me. A dog tracks scent, not magic. We can beat it. How? Calla wheezed, her breath pluming in the frigid air. We stop running and start erasing, Aiden said. He looked at the terrain. About 100 yards east, a semi-frozen stream cut through the valley floor. We're going into the water. Calla looked at the stream, then back at him. It's freezing. Hypothermia takes hours. Aiden said grimly. A bullet takes a second. Let's go. They slid down the embankment. The water was black and moved with a sluggish, icy violence. Aiden stepped in first, the water biting through his boots instantly. He turned and lifted Calla. She was light, too light. He hoisted her onto his back. Hold on tight. Do not touch the water, he commanded. He waded upstream. This was standard E&E, escape and evasion. By moving upstream, he forced the water to push against him, ensuring that any sediment he kicked up would flow back toward his pursuers, settling faster than if he went downstream. He walked for nearly half a mile, his legs going numb, his mind retreating into a meditative state of endurance. Finally, he found what he was looking for, a rocky overhang where the wind had scoured the snow away, leaving bare granite. He climbed out, careful not to leave watermarks on any dry soil, stepping only on the rocks. He set Calla down. She was shivering, her teeth chattering like castanets. We need to warm up, she stuttered. Not yet, Aiden said. He moved to a nearby pine tree, snapping off a series of low-hanging branches. He wasn't building a fire. Smoke was a beacon. He was building a thermal shield. Educational lesson number 1, Aiden muttered, working with frantic speed to weave the branches into a makeshift lean-to against the rock wall. In the wild, your enemy is the cold. In a hunt, your enemy is thermal imaging. Drones look for heat. We have to mask ours. He pulled a space blanket, a reflective mylar sheet from his go bag. He didn't wrap it around them. He strung it up above them, under the pine boughs. This reflects our body heat back down, he explained to Calla, ushering her into the small, cramped space. And it blocks the heat signature from looking like a human shape from the sky. To a drone, will look like a cold patch of rock. He crawled in beside her. The space was tight. He pulled the wool blanket over both of them. Now, Aiden said, his voice low. We wait. For how long? Calla asked, curling into his side for warmth. Until the sun goes down. They rely on tech. Night vision, thermals. Tech makes people lazy. They'll assume we're still running. They'll push past us. They lay in the silence for a long time. The cold was a dull ache in Aiden's bones, but Calla's shivering began to subside as their shared body heat trapped under the mylar created a microclimate. Aiden? She whispered. Yeah. Why did Marcus have to die? The question hung in the air, heavier than the snow-laden branches above them. Aiden closed his eyes. He saw the dusty room in Syria again. He felt the weight of Marcus's body. He died because he found out something he wasn't supposed to, Aiden said carefully. He found out about the bad men. About you. He told me stories about you, Calla said. He said you were the only man who could walk through a field of dry leaves without making a sound. He called you Ghost. Aiden swallowed a lump in his throat. Marcus exaggerated. He said you saved him once, in a place with lots of sand. He saved me too, Aiden replied. That's what teammates do. We balance the scales. Is that what you're doing now? Calla asked, tilting her head to look at him. Balancing the scales. Aiden looked down at her. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and far too old for her face. No, Aiden said softly. This isn't about debt, Calla. This is about doing what's right. There's a difference. Outside, the sound of the helicopter returned. It was distant, circling. Then, closer, the sound of boots crunching on snow. Aiden's hand moved to the grip of his rifle. He signaled Calla to be silent. The footsteps stopped. A voice, distorted by a radio, drifted through the trees. Lost the track at the stream. They must have gone in. Dog is confused. The water masked it. Circle back to the ridge. We'll cut them off at the pass. The footsteps receded. Aiden let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The button hook maneuver had worked. By walking upstream and then doubling back to a hiding spot near their entry point, He had tricked the trackers into thinking they had continued forward. The pursuers were now moving away from them, creating a gap. "They're gone," Calla whispered. "For now," Aiden said. "Get some sleep, kid. At sundown, we become ghosts." Night in the mountains was absolute. The darkness was a physical substance, impenetrable and cold. But for Aiden, darkness was an ally. It was cover. They moved faster now. Aiden had Calla walk in his footsteps again, but this time he used a technique called brushing. Every 50 yards he would use a pine branch to fluff the snow behind them, obscuring the distinct outline of boot prints, making them look like clumps of fallen snow from the trees. Their destination was an old logger's cabin about 6 miles south near the state highway. It was a ruin, abandoned for decades, but Aiden knew it had a root cellar. More importantly, he had a cache there. Aiden Cross didn't believe in leaving things to chance. Over the years, he had buried supplies in 3 different locations within a 20-mile radius of his home. It was paranoia, his therapist had said. It was insurance, Aiden had corrected. They reached the clearing around midnight. The cabin was a skeleton of rotting wood. The roof caved in. "It looks scary," Calla said, clutching the straps of the oversized backpack Aiden had rigged for her. "Scary keeps people away," Aiden said. "Come on." He led her around the back to a heavy iron storm door set into the earth, hidden beneath a pile of decaying leaves. He heaved it open. The air that rushed out smelled of damp earth and potatoes. They descended. Aiden clicked on a red lens tactical light. The cellar was small, lined with stone. In the corner sat a waterproof barrel. Aiden cracked the seal. Inside were MREs, meals ready to eat, fresh batteries, a change of clothes, and a satellite phone. "Jackpot," Aiden muttered. He handed Calla a packet of beef stew MRE. "There's a chemical heater in there, just add water." While Calla figured out the heating pouch, her eyes wide with fascination as the chemical reaction began to steam, Aiden took the satellite phone and stepped back out to the entrance for a signal. He needed to make a call, but not to the authorities. The local police would be overwhelmed, or worse, compromised. The federal agencies were a gamble. If Project Chimera had DOD clearance, calling the FBI might just ring the phone on the desk of the man hunting them. He dialed a number that hadn't existed in 5 years. It rang once, twice. "This line is dead," a female voice said. Flat, unwelcoming. "The bird has flown the coop," Aiden said, reciting a code phrase he hoped was still valid. "And the hawk is dead." There was a pause, a long static-filled silence. "Aiden?" The voice lost its robotic edge. "You're supposed to be retired, or dead. I heard dead." "Not yet, Val," Aiden said. "I need an extraction, but it's hot, very hot." Valerie Val Kincaid, formerly CIA Special Activities Division. She was the best logistics operator Aiden had ever worked with. She now ran a private security consulting firm out of Boston, or so the rumors said. "Define hot," Val said. "Black Ops team, rotors, trackers, and I have a package, high value, the kind that gets people erased." "Who are you running from, Aiden?" "Chimera." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Chimera," Val repeated, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Aiden, if you're mixed up in that, that's not a hornet's nest. That's a nuclear reactor." "I know. Can you help me?" "Where are you?" "Route 100, near the old logging road junction. I need wheels, something off the grid. Give me 3 hours. There's a diner called The Rusty Spoon 10 miles south of you." "Behind the dumpster there will be a sedan, keys in the exhaust pipe." "But Aiden." "Yeah? If you bring that heat to my doorstep, I'll kill you myself." "Understood. Cross out." Aiden killed the connection and pulled the battery from the phone. He went back down into the cellar. Calla was eating the stew, some color returning to her cheeks. She looked up at him. "Who was that?" "A friend," Aiden said. "We have a ride." He sat down opposite her and picked up the dog tag again. "Calla, I need you to tell me about the place you came from, the place before the attic." Calla stopped eating. The spoon trembled in her hand. "The White Room," she whispered. "Is that what they called it?" "Yes. It was always bright. No windows. They made us solve puzzles, hard puzzles. And if we got them right, they gave us candy. If we got them wrong..." She trailed off. "What happened if you got them wrong?" "They put us in the box." The box with the loud noises. Aiden's jaw tightened. Sensory overload torture, used to break resistance, used on terrorists. They were using it on children to force cognitive compliance. "Did you see other kids?" "Yes, 7 of us, but I was the best at hiding. Marcus taught me. He told me, hide inside your head first, then hide your body." "Marcus was there?" "He was a guard," Calla revealed. "Before he was my dad. He was a guard, but he didn't like what they did. One night he took me. We ran. He became my dad after that." Aiden felt the pieces click together. Marcus hadn't just found a daughter. He had rescued a test subject. He had defected. That explained the mercenaries. It wasn't just a retrieval mission. It was a cleanup operation. Marcus was a loose end who could expose a program of unimaginable cruelty. "He saved you," Aiden said, "and now we're going to make sure it wasn't for nothing." He reached into the barrel and pulled out a tactical vest. He stripped the plates out to make it lighter and handed it to Calla. "Put this on under your hoodie. It will keep you warm, and it might save your life." "Are we fighting?" Calla asked, her voice small. Aiden checked the magazine of his rifle. "No, we're finishing it." The hike to the diner was a grueling march along the shoulder of the highway, hidden in the drainage ditch. Cars passed in frequently, their headlights cutting through the swirling snow, oblivious to the 2 figures crouched in the shadows. By the time they reached the Rusty Spoon, it was 3 a.m. The diner was closed, a neon sign buzzing intermittently. Aiden left Calla in the tree line. "Stay here. Count to 300. If I'm not back, you run back into the woods and you don't stop." "I'm not leaving you," she said defiantly. "That's an order, Calla." She glared at him, but nodded. Aiden moved across the parking lot. He stuck to the shadows, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. He reached the dumpsters in the back. There it was, a beat-up, rust-bucket 1998 Honda Civic. Val had a sense of humor. It was ugly, nondescript, and perfect. No GPS, no OnStar, nothing to hack. Aiden reached under the rear bumper and felt the exhaust pipe. His fingers brushed cold metal, then the sharp edge of a key. He unlocked the door and slipped inside. The car smelled of stale cigarettes and pine air freshener. He turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then caught with a reliable hum. He drove the car around the back, flashing the lights once. Calla emerged from the trees, sprinting to the passenger side. She dove in, shivering. "Luxury ride," she quipped, her teeth chattering. "It runs. That's all that matters." Aiden pulled out onto the highway, keeping his speed exactly at the limit. He didn't want to get pulled over for a broken taillight while carrying a military-grade rifle and a fugitive child. They drove in silence for an hour, putting distance between them and the mountains. The heater finally kicked in, blasting hot, dry air. "Where are we going?" Calla asked, her eyes drooping with exhaustion. "Boston," Aiden said. "To see Val. She can decrypt the chip in your necklace. Once we have the data, the proof of what they're doing, we have leverage. Right now, we're just targets. With that data, we become a threat." "I like being a threat better," Calla mumbled, drifting off to sleep. Aiden cracked a smile. She was definitely Marcus's kid. But the moment of levity was shattered when they passed a gas station with a large TV screen playing the 24-hour news cycle in the window. Aiden slowed down, his eyes narrowing. On the screen was a photo of him. It was his military service photo, looking stern and disciplined. The headline scrolled beneath it in bold red letters, "Breaking news, armed and dangerous. Veteran sought in connection with double homicide and kidnapping." Aiden slammed his hand on the steering wheel. "Damn it." "What?" Calla woke up, startled. "Don't look," Aiden said, accelerating. They weren't just hunting him in the shadows anymore. They had weaponized the narrative. They had killed the team at the cabin, or maybe planted bodies, and pinned it on him. To the world, Aiden Cross wasn't a hero protecting a child. He was a PTSD-ridden monster who had snapped. "What is it, Aiden?" Calla pressed. "They changed the game," Aiden said, his voice cold steel. "They put my face on the news. Every cop, every state trooper, Every concerned citizen is looking for us now. He looked at Calla. We can't go to Boston. Not directly. They'll be watching the highways. They'll be watching Val. So what do we do? Aiden looked at the road ahead, stretching out into the darkness. He had to think like the enemy. They expected him to run. They expected him to go to ground. We stop running, Aiden said. We go on the offense. We need to find out who gave the order. How? We're going to catch a ghost, Aiden said. We're going to find the man who runs Chimera. He swung the car onto a dirt exit ramp, heading away from the main highway, disappearing into the rural backroads of New Hampshire. The chase was over. The war had begun. The transition from the pristine, silent wilderness of Vermont to the gritty industrial sprawl of the Manchester outskirts was jarring. The 1998 Honda Civic, now sporting stolen license plates from a similar model parked at a long-term airport lot, a classic switch to confuse automated license plate readers, rumbled over the cracked asphalt. Aiden drove with one hand on the wheel, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors. He wasn't looking for police cruisers. He was looking for ghost cars, unmarked sedans, SUVs with tinted windows, vehicles that maintained a fixed distance. Educational point, Aiden said quietly, breaking the silence that had filled the car for the last hour. In the city, you don't hide by being invisible. You hide by being boring. You blend into the baseline of the environment. Calla sat in the passenger seat, wearing an oversized baseball cap Aiden had found in the glove box. She looked out at the passing warehouses and flickering streetlights. Is that why we're driving slow? Exactly. Speed draws the eye. Aggression draws the eye. We're just commuters. Aiden pulled the car into the alleyway behind a dilapidated electronics repair shop. It was the kind of place that had bars on the windows and a sign that hadn't been lit since the early 2000s. This was the domain of Slider, an old contact from Aiden's contracting days. Slider was a genius with hardware and a ghost in the digital world. If anyone could access the encrypted data on Calla's dog tag without alerting the NSA, it was him. Stay in the car, Aiden ordered, killing the engine. Lock the doors. If anyone approaches, honk the horn. Long blasts. I know, Calla said, her hand hovering near the door lock. I'm the lookout. Aiden slipped out, pulling his collar up. He approached the steel back door and knocked a specific rhythm. Knock, knock. Pause. Knock. A slide viewer opened. A pair of bloodshot eyes peered out. Closed. A voice rasped. Open up, Slider. It's the wolf. The eyes widened. Locks tumbled, 3 of them, and the door groaned open. Slider was a thin, nervous man surrounded by towers of servers, dismantled drones, and tangled wires. The room hummed with the sound of cooling fans. Your heat, Aiden, Slider hissed, ushering him in and bolting the door. I saw the news. They say you clipped a family. They say you're off the deep end. You know the news is scripted, Aiden said, his voice calm. I need a favor. Favor? You need a miracle. The bounty on your head is 7 figures. Aiden ignored the threat. He pulled the dog tag from his pocket and placed it on a workbench cleared of debris. I need to know what's on this, and I need it done without pinging the grid. Air gap system only. Slider picked up the tag, inspecting the chip embedded in the steel. High-end, military-grade encryption, probably AES 256 with a biometric lock. If I force it, it wipes itself. It's not biometric, Aiden said. It's mnemonic. There's a password. You got it? No. But she does. Aiden signaled to the back door. Let her in. Slider hesitated, then unlocked the door again. Calla slipped inside, looking small among the looming server racks. This is the dangerous fugitive? Slider asked sarcastically. This is the client, Aiden corrected. Calla, show him. Calla approached the bench. She looked at the tag, then at the computer screen Slider had prepared. It needs a key, Slider said. A phrase, a number sequence. Calla closed her eyes. She hummed a melody, the same one she had hummed in the attic. It was a lullaby, but the cadence was mathematical. Marcus taught me, she whispered. He said the music is the map. She reached for the keyboard. Her small fingers flew across the keys. She didn't type words. She typed a sequence of hexadecimal code. To anyone else, it was gibberish. To Calla, it was a pattern she had memorized, a sequence ingrained in her during those long nights in the White Room where patterns were the only safety. Access granted. The screen flooded with data. Slider whistled low. Mother of God. Aiden, look at this. Aiden leaned in. It wasn't just a personnel file. It was a ledger, a list of transactions, names of politicians, high-ranking generals, foreign dignitaries, and next to each name, a dollar amount and a delivery date. They're selling them, Aiden realized, his blood running cold. Project Chimera isn't just about super soldiers, it's about selling conditioned assassins to the highest bidder. Look at the bottom, Kala pointed. The location. There, glowing in green text, was a coordinate set and a name. Hanover Facility, Sector 4. Hanover, Aiden muttered. The old industrial park north of Boston. It's supposed to be a condemned chemical plant. Perfect cover, Slider said, typing furiously. High security fences, hazardous material warnings to keep the locals away, plenty of underground storage. Suddenly a red light on Slider's console began to blink. Traffic, Slider snapped. Someone is pinging the local cell tower, trying to triangulate a signal. We're air-gapped, Aiden said. They're not tracking the computer, Slider said, his face pale. They're tracking you. Facial recognition from the street cam outside the alley. I told you, Aiden, the city is eyes everywhere. Aiden grabbed the dog tag and the flash drive Slider had copied the data onto. We're leaving. Wipe the drive. Burn the logs. Already doing it. Get out. Aiden grabbed Kala's hand. Run! They burst out the back door just as a black SUV screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley. Doors flew open. Men in tactical gear poured out. Contact front, Aiden yelled. He didn't fire. He grabbed Kala and shoved her behind a dumpster, taking a knee. Stay low. He scanned the environment. 3 hostiles, moving in a wedge formation, professional, deadly. Aiden looked at the fire escape above them. Can you climb? Yes, Kala said. Go, up to the roof. Don't look down. Aiden drew his pistol. He wasn't going to shoot to kill, not yet. He fired 2 shots into a steam pipe running along the wall next to the attackers. The pipe burst with a deafening hiss, sending a jet of scalding white steam across the alley. Smokescreen, Aiden muttered. Under the cover of the steam, he vaulted onto the fire escape, following Kala. They scrambled up the rusting metal stairs, the sound of boots clanging echoing in the night. Below, the tactical team shouted orders, their vision obscured. They reached the roof. Aiden scanned the horizon. We move across the rooftops, break the line of sight. Then we find a new ride. Kala looked at him, breathless. They found us so fast. They have the resources, Aiden said, holstering his weapon. But we have the intel. We know where the head of the snake is now, and we're going to cut it off. They spent the rest of the night in a forgotten maintenance shed on the roof of a garment factory. It was cold, smelling of grease and pigeon droppings, but it was secure. Aiden rigged a tripwire at the door using fishing line and a stack of empty paint cans, a primitive alarm system, but effective. Morning brought a gray, steel-colored sky. Aiden sat against the wall, cleaning his weapon. Kala was studying the printed schematics of the Hanover facility that Slider had managed to print before the purge. You're staring at that like it's a puzzle, Aiden observed. It is, Kala said, tracing a line on the paper. Look, the ventilation system. It doesn't make sense. Aiden moved closer. How so? Normal buildings breathe like this. She drew a circle. In and out. This one breathes only in. And the exhaust vents. They aren't on the roof. They go down. Aiden studied the blueprint. She was right. The HVAC system was designed to scrub air and push it into subterranean levels, but the exhaust was routed into the existing sewer lines to mask heat signatures. Underground, Aiden said. The facility is an iceberg. The chemical plant is just the tip. The lab is below. Educational lesson, Kala said, mimicking his tone from earlier, a small smile playing on her lips. If you want to hide a secret, put it where people don't want to look. Aiden chuckled, a rare, rusty sound. Smart. Very smart. He looked at her. In the span of 48 hours, she had gone from a terrified victim to a tactical asset. It was impressive, but it was also tragic. No child should know how to read blueprints for a black site prison. Calla, Aiden said, his voice softening. When this is over, what do you want? Do you want to find a family? A normal life? Calla looked down at the paper. I don't know what normal is. I just don't want to be a number anymore. You're not a number, Aiden said fiercely. You're Calla, and you're with me. I won't let them put you back in a box. What about you? She asked. What do you want? Aiden paused. He hadn't thought about a future in years. His life had been a series of missions, followed by a retirement of silence. I want to finish the mission, he said, for Marcus. Marcus said you were sad, Calla said bluntly. He said your heart was heavy because you carried everyone else's ghosts. Aiden looked away. The truth of it stung. Marcus talked too much. He loved you, Calla said. He said you were the only one who didn't lose his soul in the sand. Aiden stood up, the emotion threatening to crack his stoic veneer. He channeled it into action. We need to move. Tonight we hit the facility. We can't wait for them to regroup. We have to be the ones knocking on the door. He began outlining the plan. It was a hammer and anvil assault, but modified for a two-person team where one person was a child. I'm the hammer, Aiden said. I'm going to make a lot of noise at the main gate. I'm going to draw their security forces to the surface. And I'm the anvil? Calla asked. No, you're the ghost. You're going to use that ventilation flaw you found. While they are fighting me, you're going to slip into the security office near the loading dock. Slider gave us a decrypt program on this drive. You plug it in, upload the files to the press, the FBI, everyone. Once that upload hits 100%, their cover is blown. The world will be watching. But you'll be alone, Calla said, her voice trembling. Against all of them. I've been alone a long time, Aiden said. He knelt and gripped her shoulders. But this time, I know you've got my 6. Can you do this? It's dangerous. If they catch you, they won't, Calla said, her eyes hardening with a steely resolve that mirrored his own. I'm small, I'm quiet, and I'm angry. Aiden nodded. Good. Anger is fuel. Just don't let it burn you up. Control it. He handed her a small, ruggedized walkie-talkie. Radio silence until the upload is done. Then you call me, and we extract. Promise me you won't die, Calla whispered. Aiden hesitated. He never made promises he couldn't keep. I promise I'll fight, he said. Let's go. The Hanover facility was a fortress of rust and concrete, looming against the night sky like a decaying beast. Floodlights swept the perimeter, and armed patrols walked the fence line with Dobermans. Aiden and Calla lay prone on a ridge overlooking the complex, covered in a camouflage tarp. Check your watch, Aiden whispered. 0200 hours. Shift change. That's our window. I see the vent, Calla said, peering through a set of binoculars. It's behind the generator shed. Okay, move out. Stick to the shadows. Don't engage. Calla slipped away, vanishing into the darkness like smoke. Aiden waited, counting the seconds. He needed to give her 5 minutes to get into position before he started the chaos. He checked his gear. He had his AR-15, 6 magazines, 2 smoke grenades, and a flashbang. It wasn't enough for a siege, but it was enough for a distraction. 5 minutes. Aiden stood up. He didn't sneak in. He walked to the main gate, raised his rifle, and fired a single shot into the spotlight above the guard shack. The glass shattered. Darkness fell over the gate. Open up, Aiden roared. Project Chimera ends tonight. The response was instant. Sirens wailed. Guards poured out of the barracks. Bullets began to snap around him, kicking up dirt. Aiden moved. He didn't stay in one spot. Shoot, move, communicate. Except he had no one to communicate with yet. He sprinted to a concrete barrier, returned fire, suppressing the guards, then moved again. He was drawing them out, pulling the hive's defenders to the perimeter. Inside the facility, Calla was crawling through a duct that smelled of oil and ozone. It was tight, claustrophobic. Her knees scraped against the metal, but she didn't stop. She could hear the muffled sounds of gunfire outside. Aiden was fighting. She reached the grate overlooking the security office. It was empty. The guards had run out to deal with the intruder. She kicked the grate open and dropped down. landing silently on the linoleum floor. She ran to the main console. It was locked, asking for credentials. She pulled out the flash drive. She plugged it in. The screen flickered. Uploading. 10%. 20%. Back outside, Aiden was pinned down. They had brought up a mounted machine gun on a truck. Heavy caliber rounds were chewing through his cover. He was bleeding from a graze on his arm, and his ammo was running low. "Come on, Calla," he gritted out, changing magazines. "Fast hands, kid." Suddenly the floodlights turned off. The electronic gates jammed open. "Upload complete." Calla's voice crackled in his earpiece. "It's done. I sent it, and I unlocked the prisoner containment doors." Aiden grinned through the grime on his face. Chaos. She had unleashed absolute chaos. But then, a cold voice cut over the facility's PA system. "Mr. Cross, very impressive. But did you really think you could dismantle a billion-dollar investment with a child and a laptop?" Aiden froze. The voice was familiar. Terrifyingly familiar. "Bring him in," the voice commanded. Suddenly the firing stopped. A circle of laser sights appeared on Aiden's chest. He was outflanked. 10 men, heavily armored, emerged from the darkness behind him. Aiden lowered his weapon. He couldn't win this firefight, not if he wanted to live long enough to get Calla out. He raised his hands. 2 guards grabbed him, zip-tying his wrists with brutal efficiency. They dragged him toward the main building, past the chaos of the fight, into the heart of the beast. They brought him to a central command room, the white room Calla had described. Standing there, looking at a wall of monitors, was a man in a crisp suit. He turned around. It was Commander Sterling, Aiden's former commanding officer, the man who had pinned the medal on Aiden's chest. "Hello, Aiden," Sterling said, smiling without warmth. "You've aged." "You sold your soul, Sterling," Aiden spat. "I sold the future," Sterling corrected. "And thanks to you, my prize asset has returned to me." Sterling pressed a button on the console. A monitor flickered to life. It showed the security office. Calla was there, staring at the door. But the door was opening. A massive figure, clad in black armor, stepped into the room with her. "No!" Aiden lunged forward, but a guard struck him in the stomach with a rifle butt. He fell to his knees, gasping. "Watch closely, Aiden," Sterling whispered, leaning down. "See what the Subject 1 program can do. She's smart, but she's not a fighter. Not yet." On the screen, Calla backed away as the armored figure reached for her. Aiden stared at the screen, helpless. "Run, Calla, run." But Calla didn't run. She stood her ground. She looked at the armored giant, then at the camera, as if looking directly at Aiden. She reached for her necklace, and then the feed cut to static. The static on the monitor hissed, a white noise that filled the command center with dread. Aiden stared at the blank screen where Calla had been just seconds ago. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that defied his training. Commander Sterling chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "It seems Subject 1 has neutralized the asset. A pity. She had potential." Aiden's vision narrowed. The world around him, the banks of servers, the armed guards, the polished floor, faded into a blur. The only thing that remained sharp was Sterling's arrogant face. "You didn't neutralize her," Aiden said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. "You just made a mistake." "And what is that?" Sterling asked, checking his watch. "You assumed she was fighting." Suddenly, the lights in the command center flickered and died. A red emergency strobe began to pulse, bathing the room in the color of blood. A computerized voice blared over the intercom. "Critical failure. Ventilation systems reversed. Halon gas deployment in Sector 4. Sterling's smile vanished. "Sector 4? That's the security hub. That's where Calla is," Aiden finished. "And she knows how to read a blueprint." Calla hadn't tried to fight the armored giant. She had lured him in. She had triggered the fire suppression system, halon gas, designed to suck the oxygen out of a room to kill a fire instantly. It would incapacitate anyone inside within seconds if they weren't wearing a mask, and Calla was small enough to crawl into the floor vents where the air pockets remained. Aiden didn't wait. He moved. He dropped his center of gravity, spinning on his heel to sweep the leg of the guard to his right. As the man fell, Aiden grabbed the rifle from his hands, using the momentum to slam the stock into the jaw of the second guard. 2 seconds. 2 threats down. "Kill him!" Sterling screamed, diving behind the console. Aiden didn't fire. He didn't want a stray bullet hitting the servers. He needed that evidence intact. He vaulted over the desk, grabbing Sterling by the lapels of his expensive suit and slamming him against the wall. "Call off your dogs," Aiden growled, the barrel of the stolen rifle pressed under Sterling's chin. "Now!" The remaining guards froze, weapons raised but uncertain. "You're too late," Sterling spat, though his eyes showed true fear for the first time. "The federal agents are on their way, but they aren't coming for me, Cross. They're coming for the terrorist who attacked a government facility." "Wrong," Aiden said. "Check the news." On the main wall, the news feeds were shifting. The upload Kala had initiated was live. Every major network was breaking into their programming. Documents, photos, videos of the White Room. It was all scrolling across the screens of the world. The narrative had flipped. Sterling wasn't a victim. He was a monster exposed to the light. "It's over," Aiden said. He didn't kill Sterling. Death was too easy. He pistol-whipped the man, knocking him unconscious. He let him drop to the floor, a broken king in a crumbling castle. Aiden turned and sprinted out of the room. "Kala!" He ran through the corridors, the red emergency lights spinning. He reached the security office in Sector 4. The heavy blast doors were sealed. Through the reinforced glass, he could see the armored figure slumped on the floor, unconscious from the oxygen deprivation. And there, banging on the glass from the inside, was Kala. She was coughing, her face pale, but she was alive. Aiden frantically typed the override code into the keypad, the same code Kala had used on the laptop. Marcus's song. The doors hissed open. Aiden rushed in, grabbing Kala and pulling her out into the hallway, away from the lingering gas. She collapsed into his arms, gasping for sweet, fresh air. I held my breath. She wheezed, like swimming. Aiden hugged her, burying his face in her soot-stained hair. For the first time in 10 years, tears stung his eyes. "You did good, kid." "You did so good." "Did we win?" she asked, looking up at him with tired eyes. Aiden listened. In the distance, the sound of sirens was getting louder. Not the facility's alarms, but the distinct wail of police and FBI sirens breaching the perimeter. "Yeah," Aiden said, lifting her up. "We won, but now we have to finish the last part of the mission." "What's that?" "Going home." They walked out of the facility, hand in hand. They didn't run. They walked out into the cold night air, into the blinding lights of the arriving convoy. Aiden raised his hands, not in surrender, but in victory. He held Kala close to his side. When the FBI agents swarmed them, shouting commands, Aiden didn't flinch. He simply pointed back at the facility. "The bad guys are in there," he said calmly. "I'm just the babysitter." 6 months later, the ocean breeze in Maine was different from the mountain air of Vermont. It was salty, sharp, and constantly moving. Aiden sat on the porch of a weathered white house overlooking the Atlantic. He was sanding a piece of wood, repairing a lobster trap. The jagged scar on his neck was still there, but the tension in his shoulders was gone. The gun safe in the house was locked, and for the first time, he didn't feel the need to check it every hour. The screen door banged open. "Aiden, look!" Kala ran onto the porch. She looked different. She had gained weight, healthy weight. Her hair was shiny, tied back in a ponytail. She was wearing a bright yellow raincoat and holding a math test. "A plus," she grinned, showing a missing tooth. "Mrs. Higgins said I'm advanced." Aiden took the paper, wiping the sawdust from his hands. He looked at the red letter circled at the top. It was just a piece of paper, but to him it was more valuable than any medal he had ever earned. "Advanced, huh?" Aiden smiled, the expression reaching his eyes. "I guess all those puzzles in the White Room were good for something." Kala's smile faltered for a second, a shadow passing over her face. The memories would never fully disappear. They both knew that. They carried scars, his on his skin, hers in her mind. But they were healing. Together. "I miss him sometimes," Kala said softly, leaning against the railing. "Marcus." "I know," Aiden said. He put the sandpaper down and pulled her into a side hug. I do too. But do you know what he would say if he saw you right now? What? He'd say you finally found your camouflage, Aiden said. You're not hiding anymore, Calla. You're just living, and that's the bravest thing you can do. Calla looked out at the ocean. Are we safe now, Aiden? For real? Aiden looked at the horizon. Project Chimera was dismantled. Sterling was awaiting trial for crimes against humanity. Val had ensured their new identities were ironclad. We're safe, Aiden said firmly. And even if trouble comes looking. He looked down at the little girl who had saved his life just as much as he had saved hers. We know how to handle it. Calla giggled. Because I'm the brain? And I'm the brawn. Aiden laughed. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. It was quiet, a good kind of quiet. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace. Aiden Cross, the veteran who wanted to be left alone, had found that silence wasn't about the absence of noise, it was about the presence of love. He picked up the math test. Come on, I think an A deserves ice cream, even in winter. Yes, Calla cheered, running back into the house. Aiden lingered on the porch for one last moment. He touched the dog tag he now wore around his own neck, Marcus's tag. Rest easy, brother, he whispered to the wind. I've got the watch. He turned and walked inside, closing the door on the cold and stepping into the warmth of his home.